Well, you're welcome back to Business Live with me, Charles IAT. Government will borrow a little about 4.5 billion cedis as fresh funds in the second quarter of this year to finance part of its budget. That's according to its issuance calendar. Now, this will, however, be higher than the 3.78 billion cedi borrowed in the first 3 months of 2022. Charles Nixon-Yeboah has more in this report.
Entire 4.5 billion cedis is expected to be mobilized from the domestic market. In all, government plans to issue a total amount of 24.69 billion cedis, of which 20.10 billion cedis is to roll over maturities. Chunk of the monies to be borrowed will come from the 91-day and 182-day treasury bills, whilst the 3 and 6 months bill will be issued weekly. The 1-year bill will be issued bi-weekly. There will also be some issuance of medium to long-term bonds. According to a statement from the Bank of Ghana, government expects the second quarter calendar to meet the requirements of market participants. Again, government is assuring all stakeholders and the public that it will continue to strive for greater predictability and transparency in the domestic bond market. As of December 2021, government debt stood at 358.1 billion cedis.
We're joined via Zoom by Director of Research at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Dr. John Kwache. Dr. Kwache, grateful that you could join us. Government intends borrowing 4.59 billion cedis as fresh funds in the second quarter of this year. Though it is pursuing an austere or tight low spending budget, it appears the spending spree is continuing because of the new funds, irrespective of the fact that government will have to finance the deficit. How do we bring down the high debt, situation we find ourselves in?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
You're loud and clear, Doc.
Okay. Well, the government has a program for the year, the budget program and the financing also for the year. Even though the government has introduced some expenditure cuts and then revenue, measures, I heard the finance minister say that the budget deficit for the year will remain the same, at least the projection of 7.4%. So I expect that the borrowing that had been planned for the year will also be the same, will be kept. And therefore, so you spread it quarterly for the year. So I believe that is what they are going by. I don't think that what they have issued is in excess of maybe what they have planned already. Maybe this is what they had planned already, and certainly it's going to add on to the debt. You see, the debt certainly will have to go up before it comes down. I mean, over the medium term. That's what you expect. In other words, our expectation is that you don't add on, too quickly to the debt, so that over the medium term, you can bring it, slowly, progressively down. So to me, and then as you also mentioned, part of the issue is going to be used to roll over existing debt. You see, so that does not create additional debt, that part of it. But as for adding on to the debt, certainly that is going to happen, but maybe at a slower pace than previously. That's what we expect.
Let's talk about debt sustainability, because we've had several economists call for some sort of prudence, measures to ensure that rising debt levels are, if not, streamlined, reduced marginally. How do you think we could get there in the medium to long term in a very sustainable manner?
Well, I expect that already the budget, the debt to GDP ratio has reached 80%. We all know that's pretty high, and the IMF, World Bank, they have described it as Ghana facing a high risk of debt distress. We have passed what we consider to be sustainable threshold for middle-income countries like Ghana, which is around 70%. But of course, we know that some of the causes. I mean, what has pushed the debt up? We include the COVID-related expenditures, the bailouts, financial sector bailouts, energy sector, payments, and so on. And these are, one-off kind of items, okay, which we do not expect to be carried over, going forward. So what we expect government to do is to try and, narrow the budget deficit over the medium term. And if you look at the 2022 budget, this is exactly what they plan to do. And when you do that, it means that the extent of borrowing will be reduced, over the medium term. And that's how you bring the debt profile, down over the medium term to sustainable levels.
Indeed. And talking of targets, government has set itself, a target of 7.4% fiscal deficit to GDP by the end of this year. Considering the trend analysis of our debt situation, issues regarding our bond market, do you think this is achievable this year?
Oh, you mean the deficit of 7.4%?
Great.
In fact, I personally has suggested that when we're considering measures, that needed to be taken, as an alternative to going to the IMF, I personally suggested that maybe we should, especially as a for signaling purposes, we want to generate our own, internal policy credibility. And I had said it will be a good signal, to try and even bring down that deficit to 6% for signaling purposes. But of course, the government knows better because they have the data, and the minister said, at least we'll stick to the 7.4%. But if you look at the medium-term projections, from the 7.4% for 2022, government is projecting that I think 2023 will be 5%, and then 4.5% 2024, and then they come back within the fiscal responsibility rule. And then I expect that if you do the debt projections also, which I don't have that profile, but I expect that they must have that profile which says that if you bring the deficit down, then of course you bring the debt, the borrowing down, and then the debt down over the medium term. But I don't have the exact figures for the debt profile, over the medium term.
That's fine. That's fine. But of course, Doc, there's been this controversial debate about the controversy of generating funds through taxation. And of course, the IA has made some propositions, including reviewing tax exemption bills, as well as blocking the leakages in the revenue space. Based on what is happening, are we making progress with improvement in revenue mobilization, especially through the avenue of e-levy?
We have consistently said that there are so many loopholes in our tax system, and we have, mentioned them. The exemptions is one, property taxes is one, trade taxes, misinvoicing of trade taxes, transfer pricing, money laundering, and then, of course, we have non-compliance. It is also another area, and there's been estimates, projections that say that if all these loopholes were to be plugged, we could add something like 10 percentage points, to the current, our tax to GDP ratio, which hovers just around the, 12%. But why these loopholes are not being plugged, that's something that I don't get it. Sometimes it takes a political will to be able to do these things. Because, for example, the tax exemptions bill has been before Parliament. It was placed before Parliament in 2019. I don't know whether it was withdrawn, but government then had the majority to be able to pass it, but it wasn't passed. Now I understand the new bill has been submitted to Parliament. I don't know how easy it's going to be to pass that bill. We have also suggested that this is the time that we should be looking at, companies that are making a lot of profit. Even in spite of COVID, in the context of COVID, the mining companies, the oil companies, the telcos, the banks, and everywhere in the world, countries are looking for booming sectors of the economy so that they can raise additional, tax from there. And we have suggested that government should also be doing the same, what we call windfall, tax. They could be temporary. It's not something that maybe you impose and then you leave it there forever. No, as and when the conditions improve, you can review them. You see, so this is the time that we should be looking at the booming sectors of the economy to try and raise more revenue. As for the e-levy, we have said that it amounts to multiple taxation, and therefore we would it's something that if the other things were being done, then that would not have been necessary. In any case, government has had to reduce it to 1.5%, and the start date is also being pushed back, which means that there will be loss of revenue there, as well as the benchmark, discount, which initially the budget said they had reversed it. Then they rather brought it back, but reduced the rates a little bit, which means government is also going to lose some revenue there. And maybe that's why, even with the cuts in expenditure, they are still saying that the budget deficit will still be the 7.4%. Otherwise, it could have been lower, and the borrowing could have been lower.
So in essence,
at a faster pace.
Yeah. So in essence, you are very confident that should we plug the loopholes? We're going to be looking at a 10 basis point of taxation to GDP in the medium to long term. Dr. John Kwakye, as always, we're grateful that you could join us with your thoughts, Director of Research at the Institute of Economic Affairs.